Well, welcome. Today, a new legacy begins. We've had the incredible luck of having Uncle Phil Ceramacoli shepherd our physicians alongside with Ed Kelly to really deliver incredible medical service here in Milford. Tonight, we're going to introduce you to a new person from very far away. I understand Medway.
Yep, Medway.
And the new legacy begins. So why don't we start with introductions?
Al, thanks for having us. Again, Ed Kelly, I'm President and CEO of Milford Regional. I've been at Milford Regional for 27 years.
Wow.
And again, it's our pleasure. Phil, after 18 years, retired last September. And we were we considered all options, but it was really loud and clear that we had the next leader internally. And I'll let Dr. McSweeney explain who he is, and he's actually been at Milford Regional for some time. So.
Yep. So I'm Pat McSweeney. So I've been a family medicine physician in the community for 25 years in Franklin and Medway, the last 20 as part of the Milford system, originally Tri-County Medical Associates, and now Milford Regional Physician Group with the name change. Lived in Medway since age 2 and came back, practiced, and so have a lot of ties to the local community. My youngest daughter was born at the hospital. My father had and my mother had joint replacements at the hospital. So from my family and professionally, I've had a long-standing history. I've been, prior to this job, I was the medical director of the group for 12 years. I was on the board of trustees of the hospital for 9 years. So I've had a lot of experience within the hospital system prior to starting this job. I worked closely with Phil for a long time, learned a lot from him, and have jumped right in with both feet beginning in September.
Well, you've got a challenge, because when we think back to Frank and then Ed, the retention of the high quality physicians we have always amazes me. So how do you keep that going? Because that to me is the magic of Milford.
Yeah. It might be worth just reviewing, Al, in terms of just kind of how we got here. It wasn't that long ago, 27 years ago, we were just, we were an independent hospital, and we had just struck a relationship with UMass to bring residents here. So internal medicine residents and medical students came down to Milford. And we were very excited to have them here. They loved it here. It was a good experience. They got to do a lot. But after the end of the first year, they wanted to stay here. We wanted to keep them here. Our historical model had been to offer some type of private practice income guarantee. And the traditional model at that time for physicians was to take out a loan and open a practice. And really there was a quick switch in the industry practice that physicians wanted to be employed, particularly primary care physicians. So that first year with the residents, they didn't come to us in private practice. In fact, they went to work for Metro West in Milford, which was a killer for us. And so sometimes we're told it was brilliant to start up our own physician group, but really we recognized that it was a necessity. And so during that year, we set up our own group, and it became the vehicle to recruit physicians, including Dr. McSweeney. And so again, that was really kind of our model for the future. Allowing us to grow was to recruit into the group and to make it attractive. And in the early years, it was somewhat easy to do because physicians were going into primary care. But as time went on, hospitalist models came up, doctors that just work in the hospital. It just seemed that it was harder and harder. It still is harder to recruit primary care physicians. But to me, it's always about the system, the people. Good doctors like to work in good places, so the stronger you make the hospital, the easier it is to bring people in and bring in specialists. But I think Pat has the hardest job. The good problem we have is people want to come to Milford Regional. So creating access, keeping physicians, bringing new physicians in, and Dr. McSweeney will talk about the new trend everywhere is advanced practitioners. So.
Yeah. So,
Okay, what's an advanced practitioner?
yeah, so an advanced practitioner is a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant. And really that's a key part of the strategy going forward to be able to take care of the community. As Ed was alluding to, there are fewer physicians going into primary care, especially adult-only primary care or internal medicine. As Ed was talking about, UMass internal medicine residency is responsible for a lot of our medical staff, which is in their sort of mid to late careers in their 50s. But as hospitalist medicine grew and the attractiveness of specialty care over primary care grew, fewer docs would go into primary care. For example, the UMass internal medicine residency program, out of 20 residents, maybe 1 or 2 will do primary care. So it's hard, it's slim pickings.
Now, why?
Well, for example, one of the main competitions now is hospitalist medicine. Those are people who take care of just people in the hospital. That's shift work. So you come in, you work a shift. When you leave, you have no responsibilities for patient care, as opposed to in primary care, your day doesn't end and you don't pass off those patients to someone else. They're still your patients. There's still all the work to be done afterwards. There's a lot of paperwork or electronic health record work, and there's after-hours call. It's built into the way medicine has always been practiced. We're available 24/7, and we have to cover each other. And there's some additional stress and makes the work more difficult than taking a shift. And then when your shift ends, you have no responsibilities. You're free. You don't have to carry your phone with you. You don't have to worry about who's calling and what to do with them. So I think the combination of that choice, the hospitalist medicine, and the discrepancy historically over income with specialty care and primary care, I think those are the 2 biggest factors.
And that's just not an issue here. It's a national
everywhere.
issue.
Well, that I
Yeah,
hear
it's-
across the country.
Yeah.
I mean, friends of mine graduated Holy Cross, went to med school.
Yeah.
They said the biggest issue they had was getting started. Not only you're almost retirement age by the time they got out of the med school, all the subsequent years of practice before they could practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sit there and say, wait a minute now. They have to invest how much in EMR, those electronic medical
A
records?
lot. Oh.
How much in malpractice?
Yep.
You sit there, and I've counseled a lot of kids at school to say, if you have a passion for medicine, then by all means go for it. But if you're going into medicine because you want a good income, think again, because you can make a heck of a lot of money in biotech jobs and all without having the responsibility of people's lives on you.
I agree. That's a problem. And despite that, I think it's harder to get into medical school now than it was 15, 20 years ago or more. When I was applying to medical school, it was much more common to go right from college to medical school. Right now, it seems that's the exception, and more people have to do something for a couple of years before applying to medical school to buff up their resume. That's been helpful to us with something called medical scribes, which we might be worth talking about coming back to a little bit later. But despite it not being as great a career choice for that reason you said, it's still harder to get into med schools. So that part doesn't make sense to me. But back to the original issue, which is it's hard to recruit primary care doctors. And part of that is retention too. So one of my focuses is not only in bringing in new docs, but to make sure that we are continuously assessing what we can do to make life for our physicians as good as possible in this healthcare environment, so they want to stay here and there's not the grass isn't greener somewhere else. And we've been pretty successful. It's pretty unusual that we lose a physician to another practice or group or location within commuting range. Most people who leave our practice, our group, sell their house and go somewhere else. They don't stay in their same house and work somewhere else, which I think is a good statement as to the
Now,
model
are you
we
going to
have.
improve on Phil's so-so track record? Uncle Phil only had 97% of the local primary cares working for him. I mean, I was always amazed because I said, just out of curiosity, I'd like to find the 3 guys or gals who don't work for him, but that's pretty amazing.
Well, I think we're the best option in town, you know, and I think being employed is really the way to go. There are very few sort of entrepreneur physicians out there who want to, you know, have a business, accept the business practice as well as the medical practice. That just doesn't happen anymore. And so really what I do when I'm recruiting is the first thing I look for is what are the local ties. If someone has local ties, then and they're a good candidate, it's full court press, right? Because that's,
they're most likely
they're
to
going to stay, right? And someone really has to sort of knock your socks off if they don't have the local tie, because it's more work to get their practice started and then have them leave in a couple of years and then be stuck with a full plate of their patients that you have to deal with, and you might not be able to find another doctor right away. I mean, I knew that I was leaving my practice in June maybe, and we're still recruiting for my practice. And so my patients, some of them took my nurse practitioners, which we'll get to, and then others we had to redistribute within the group. And fortunately, we were able to do that a couple of times. But this is all a precursor of talking about physician and difficulty recruiting up to what's an APP. So an APP is an advanced practice provider, nurse practitioner, physician's assistant. For a number of years now in Massachusetts, nurse practitioners can practice independently, meaning they don't need to have a supervising physician. So they can have their own panel of patients. The insurers recognize them as primary care providers. You can sign up with your HMO and choose a nurse practitioner to be your primary care provider, not a physician. That's been going on for a few years in Massachusetts. We've been a little bit slow to adopt that because our model had been more of a collaborative approach between a physician and a nurse practitioner. I've had one nurse practitioner I've worked with for 20 years. I trust her implicitly. My patients trust her implicitly. I've been able to have a large patient panel because of her, and that's worked really well, and we've had several examples of that within our group. It's work for a physician to have that relationship, and there's time and mentoring and so on. And so not a lot of our physicians were willing to make that initial investment in working with a nurse practitioner. Well, now out of necessity, because we need the providers for primary care, and we've kind of sweetened the deal a little bit to encourage them more to do so, and we've been successful.
Now, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but I can understand why a physician would adopt electronic medical records. You know, make them more efficient, better access, higher quality. I can understand why they would be part of your group, because most of the physicians I know, at least the older ones, really have a passion for medicine. And the idea of spending 3 hours a day doing paperwork versus, as they say, you know how many patients I could see in 3 hours? Mm-hmm. I mean, I can understand it. But from a patient point of view, mm-hmm. I've got Dr. Carlson, good Holy Cross boy, right? I go to him.
You're one of those, huh? You're one of those, the Holy Cross guy.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to Milford. That was when I asked Phil who I should pick, he said, you know, here's the qualifications, Andy's purple. I said, okay, that seals the deal. But why would I choose as a patient somebody, in my mind, not an MD?
Number one, availability.
Okay.
So if you want to get into Milford Regional Physician Group with a primary care provider and get into the Milford Regional system, there's really no physician options at this point.
So it's all closed practices?
Right.
Largely, yeah.
Right. And nurse practitioners are well qualified.
Well, see, I think that's the piece that I think some people get nervous about. Yeah. Are you giving me the JV team?
I would say no. I'll put it this way. I've had smart, well-educated, professional patients who are very successful in their lives, in their own business, who've had more faith in my nurse practitioner when I'm not available than other doctors that they've seen in the past. Okay, so I think it's more about the individual. It's a big debate over qualifications, and certainly physicians have more training than nurse practitioners. The question is how much is enough, and I think they have plenty to be good primary care providers.
The nurse practitioners know their limits.
Most do, and
Right.
just like most docs know their limits, and because we all have limits, and I think that's very important, whether you're a nurse practitioner or a physician, is knowing your limit and knowing
Because,
where to go for help.
I mean,
Yep.
we do certain things here at the Milford Medical Center,
Right.
but you know, the 1% or whatever that requires a specialist, we have relationships with other institutions. So even a Dr. Carlson or a physician will say, okay, you've hit my top end of expertise, I'm going to refer you. So is a nurse practitioner the same way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a great comparison, Al.
Yeah, yeah. I think to answer your other question, we should talk about urgent care at some point, because if people want something quick, urgent care is a quick solution. But I think availability is a big issue, and continuity. So I think, you know, even when my kids were growing up in another part of the state, the person that we were able to see all the time almost became kind of really the provider, was a nurse practitioner, because you get to know them, they get to know you. So again, accessing care to any physician that has a pretty full practice is tough. Maybe it's easier for a scheduled visit in a year, but you know, people get sick during the year. And so the ability to get in when you want is much tougher with the physician. With an advanced practitioner, it's a lot easier. So, and you have continuity. Obviously, another important part of our service here that's really helped relieve the stress is urgent care, which we now have 4
They are
urgent cares.
fantastic.
They are fantastic. And
Because I've gotten to use, I mean, obviously, I don't want to take anything away from the Taj Mahal Hopkins.
Yep.
You know, that ER room is, compared to what we grew up with in Milford, that is just incredible.
Yeah.
But a couple times,
Yep.
you know, no slam to Jeff, but I went to the one in Hopkinton, and I went to the one right across the street here in Milford. I mean, first of all, it looked like the same people that I saw in the ER.
Well, some of the physicians are, but I think something that's really important about our urgent care is they're really physician practices of MRPG. So when you walk in, it's the same record. I thought you were going to say sometimes it's the same staff, but really you're within the same practice, you know, for MRPG patients. So I think it's a great service. It's a big jump start versus walking into a place that's never seen you and doesn't have any of your records.
And I think
Right.
I think that's a key message to our patients, which we're trying to educate them all the time, because there is some competition with some other urgent cares around, and I really think the benefit of using our urgent cares are the providers there can look at your entire record, see your medication list, your problem list, look at your last visit with your regular doctor, and also get that information from that urgent care visit back to your primary care doctor instantaneously.
And it was so simple. I mean, I walked in, I think it took me all of 2 minutes for, you know, to answer 4 or 5 questions. The next thing I know, she has my life pulled up on a screen.
Yep.
I mean, that seems a lot easier than,
Well, that's why we go through all the struggles of using an EMR,
Yeah.
right? You can't do that with paper, and you can't do that with an EMR that's non-integrated, and you can't do that with an urgent care that's not integrated.
Yeah.
and
to
the
your
other thing
system.
was, I was debating which is closer, Milford or Hopkinton, you know, where I was. And I never even thought, am I worried about quality? No. Accessibility? No. I mean, all the key things. And all I'm worried about is which one is 5 minutes closer.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a tribute to what you've built.
Yep. So you think about we have primary care physicians, we have advanced practitioners, we have urgent care, and we have a new urgent care this year. So we have ones in, as you mentioned, we have them in Northbridge and Hopkinton. We've had one in Milford, but we're very, very excited about the new site that just opened in Franklin. It's the whole site, but it also is a new urgent care site for us.
Yeah, it's terrific. It's 44,000 square feet. We have a large internal medicine practice. We have a family medicine practice. We have a pediatric practice. We have a new OBGYN practice there. We have a rheumatologist, and we have urgent care, all in one building.
And you have hospital
And we have
ancillaries.
hospital ancillaries, X-ray, including mammograms and lab.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the problems we had in Hopkinton was we had great groups, but in really old kind of dungy space with an inability to expand. So even if we said, hey, I want to work in Franklin, in the old space, there was no room. So we've moved to this new space right across, roughly from Gorelick Farm. Really nice, well-designed, laid out, the staff's laid them out. They're in space that's a little bigger to provide for some growth. And it's just all together, and it's really nice. But to have urgent care, so you go into the same building. If you can't get into your practice, you can go into urgent care. It's really fantastic. Again, same thing, same record.
Well,
so
it makes the labs easy too.
Yep.
Because when you forget to go to the labs and you forget to pre-register, not that that happened to me, but I just had to go downstairs. Within minutes, I was harpooned. They took my blood away. They did everything, and I'm done. Then I could go upstairs.
Yeah, it's nice. One-stop shopping is nice, and I think, people's expectations are not to have to kind of run all over the place for one visit or all the care related to one visit. So.
Well, I think the tension too. I mean, let's face it. Nobody wants to go visit a physician. Sorry, I don't mean to slam, but it's not something I wake up and say, I want to go see my physician today. If I'm going there, unless it's a health visit, there's a reason.
Yep.
So I've got some anxiety to begin with. If you can minimize it, because I just have to drive and walk upstairs or downstairs, boy, that takes a lot of the agita right down to management level.
it really does.
And then if I'm seeing, I always joked until my mother passed away. It was 15 years ago that they found intestinal cancer. And Dr. Cadis, who never was called Dr. Cadis again in my house, my mother went to her every 6 months, and she went to see Dr. Mona. Dr. Mona will take care of me. And it was amazing what it meant to my mother, that it was the same person that took care of her from the day they found the problem until my mother passed away. And she didn't have to drive to Boston.
Yep.
We just drove down the street.
Well, that's where our relationships with our multiple tertiary care centers is important. Just like you want to go kind of one place to get all your stuff done at the one site in Franklin that we talked about. Well, we've worked hard over the years to establish our relationships with the Boston hospitals and the Worcester hospitals.
Now tell me something. Most, I guess, community hospitals brag about having a relationship
With one academic
with
medical
one,
center.
like, wow, we're aligned with UMass.
Yeah, but we're aligned with four, kind of four big, and actually, Dr. McSweeney, we were just talking ahead of time. We have some other doctors that are coming from some other systems, like, for example, Tufts. So it's, people want, academic medical centers want to work with us. But I think it's all about knowing limits. So like you said, advanced practitioners, urgent care, primary care, community hospital has limits too. And so we only want to do what we should do here locally. And this access to the four academic medical centers is really terrific. Just to credit Dr. Mona, actually I was just visiting a patient yesterday who's in the hospital who's taken care of by Mona. And she said, wow, she's never changed, she looks the same. And I tell her that she gave me gray hair. I didn't have gray hair till we started working on the cancer center. And how lucky we are to have Dana Farber in Milford. But Dr. Mona is still going strong, and she's really, we've added to that team there, and the cancer center is such a really big center here for us. And just about a year ago, I think we probably talked last year, the radiation oncology services run by Brigham and Women's just added a second unit here. So when we first started, some centers said, you can't support a cancer center here. We're actually expanding to it. And again, it's about knowing your limits. There's new technology here, so there's new types of cancers that can be treated locally. And as you probably know, radiation therapy is something that when you need it typically every day for 30, 40 days. So the difference to be able to have that service with Brigham and Women's here in Milford versus having to travel every single day for a treatment that's 15, 20 minutes, it's gigantic.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
gigantic.
not a physician, but I gotta believe there's some psychological advantage to driving down Route 140, get my treatment, and drive home, versus an hour and a half into the city. I mean, I can just see myself at the end of that hour and a half being more wound up.
Not only the patient, but the caregiver, the family who has to be involved in that too. And, you know, and I think that's one of the, you know, key feathers in our cap is that we've not only, the Cancer Center is sort of the biggest, most obvious example of bringing, you know, Boston tertiary care out to Milford, but we've got it in multiple specialties, whether they're here full-time or 1 day a week or 1 day a month, depending on the need. We're constantly working to bring more services locally so that our patients in our community can get it here and not have to travel. The most recent, which Ed was alluding to, is we have a urogynecologist who's part of Tufts Medical Center who's coming out a couple days a month to do, 1 day a month he'll do urogynecology surgeries, and the other day a month he'll be seeing patients in consultation. Those patients otherwise would have to travel to either Worcester or Boston for that
Dr.
care.
Z?
No, this is Dr. Elanis, his name is.
Yeah. And he's someone that was in our community, and he got this appointment at Tufts, so he's the chief. He's fabulous. So he's well known to patients, but he's particularly well known to our medical staff, and they are thrilled that he's coming back here.
Well,
So we're thrilled he's here, but he also, despite moving his practice into Boston, wanted to continue to have a relationship with our hospital, which again I think speaks highly of the hospital.
Yeah.
Well, I was telling you a year ago, just over a year ago, I had a bit of a nuisance where I was one of those guys who ignores. You know, and you sit there and say, okay, I'm getting tightness of the chest, I'm getting nauseous, my arm's going numb, hello. You don't have to be a cardiac surgeon to understand I should have taken care of it. But when I finally, Dr. Carlson sent me to Dr. Shine, sent me in for a stress test, and they said, something's not good here. I was amazed because within a couple hours, I was in an ambulance, on a bed, ready to be catheterized. I mean, talk about seamless. You know, and a day later, I got a quadruple bypass, and that was Thursday night, so Friday, almost 3 days later, I'm back in Milford. I mean, if there's a testament to the system works, that was it, because there was so minimal of a hassle for me. And I mean, it's a big nuisance, but it was annoying, and yet done. You know, they took care of everything from Dr. Carlson slapping me, you know, to reality, Dr. Shine saying, get over there now, you know. Kind of reminds me, you know, we joke about when Milford, when it was the little red building, even before Ed, you knew who you were by which of 4 physicians brought you into Milford. There were only 4. You were either Cicchetti or Mastria. I mean, they can name them, right? Now, all of a sudden, it's amazing what y'all have built.
Yeah.
Now, when somebody is considering coming to Milford as a physician, why? What do you tell them?
Yeah.
What would you say is the main reason you should come to Milford?
I think it's the medical staff, it's the community. I would like to think it's the physician group and the practice we've built there and the doctors. So I think we do our due diligence ahead of time, and we're kind of picky, and we have been for years over who we bring in, and the results speak for themselves. So we demanded quality, we expected quality, we got quality, not only technically for surgeons or with intelligence, but the way they cared for patients, the way they interact, and it grew upon itself. And so I think our medical staff is excellent, our relationships with our specialists from the tertiary care centers and the hospital itself. I've told this story many times, and I'll tell it again now, is I was on staff at another hospital for the first 6 years of my career. And I was recruited by Ed and Frank to my office to come to Milford. And I agreed and my last week at the other hospital, rounding at the hospital, sitting at the nurse's station, just observing what was going on as I was about to leave, and realized, boy, there's a lot of complaining and a lot of, unhappy people here, just hearing the noise in the background. A week later, I'm the new guy trying to learn my way around the units at Milford, seeing my patients there. Everyone's asking me if I need any help. It's a new face. I'm this person. So not only making me feel comfortable there, but even when I was just by myself doing my work, doing the same thing,
Yeah, but
observing
that's
what was
gotta rub
around.
off on your patients.
Yeah.
I mean, if they see grumbly, grumpy growlers running around, that can't make them feel really good about being there.
But this is 20 years ago, and I remember it like it was yesterday. The 180-degree difference between the atmosphere at this other hospital, which may have been more the norm, and this this community that I was in on this nursing ward. That everybody felt like they were on the same team, pulling together. The atmosphere there, everybody there for each other, for the patients, and it kind of sounds a little corny, but it's absolutely accurate, and it's been that way, I think, for 20 years. And that's what I tell docs when they're about coming here. That's what they're going to get.
I think there's two things that come to mind to answer your questions, but why do physicians want to work here? I agree with Dr. McSweeney. I think, again, it's really the team. It's the caregivers. It's the environment. I credit our entire team, Frank, for his leadership in terms of culture, and he taught me a lot. But I think one thing that helps us a little bit, medicine. There's been a shift towards for-profit medicine, and so again, when we talk to other providers, sometimes it's not always attractive. And so I think to come out, so I think to answer your question, physicians want a good place to practice their trade. So I'm going to use an example. We had a terrific ENT, ear, nose, and throat group here, very, very stable, had been here. And for different reasons, again, not the competitor next door, relocated to different areas. So some was a semi-retirement. One was a spouse, got a job in different state and had to leave. And so we were, suddenly went from like a stellar service to kind of trouble access. So we went into the recruitment mode, and again, I want to give Dr. McSweeney some credit here, well deserved, that we've recruited 3 excellent ENT surgeons, right down on Route 16 in great space. So why do they come here? Great primary care base, so great referral patients. Physicians, they want to practice their trade. It's like anything. If you do a lot of it, if you get a lot of business, you get better at it. So physicians want to come to a place that they're going to be pretty busy, and they're busy here. Their patient needs emergency service, so they're going to be able to get care. Oh, you've got Jeff Hopkins. What'd you call it?
Taj Mahal Hopkins.
So that's good. Hey, if I go to the operating room, what's the staff like? What's your anesthesia group like? What's the ICU like?
Have you ever heard of a Da Vinci?
So yeah, that's coming in ENT, but not quite there yet. You walk them around. This is where you're going to be working. You have almost all private rooms. It's so to me, it's like show people, meet people.
Well, a lot of it too. You got to give yourself credit because the toys they have.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm amazed that Milford, even though I call it the center of the universe, got an accelerator. When you said the state chose us to have 2,
yeah,
and then an institution's willing to, what is it, $10 million?
They're in that. Again, officially, Brigham is the one that procured that, but it's here. But again, and we feel so lucky in terms of who we've recruited for ENT. Again, their specialty. I mean, Chris's.
Yeah, we have a fellowship-trained pediatric ENT doc who's leading he's the chief of that division of the Department of Surgery. We have 2 general ENT surgeons, Dr. Shaw and Russell, who are young and excellent, and patients love them. The access is good. They're getting the care that they should be getting here now. And we have huge pediatric population here, both within Milford Regional Physician Group and some other private practices in the area. So the ability to take care of kids with ENT problems here is outstanding.
By the way, they have a fantastic advanced practitioner there too.
Absolutely.
Courtney
Yeah,
Sherlock.
yeah. Who's a physician
Here's another
assistant.
example. I go to her. What? It's better access. It's just kind of, it's one of those things that, over the years. So
how many physicians do you, we have the hospital.
Yep.
That's one operating unit, I guess you'd call it. You have the physicians, and then you have the foundation.
So we have three companies. So the hospital is the hospital, but it's also a parent organization. And officially under it is the physician group, MRPG, Milford Regional Physician Group, and the foundation that does fundraising. We like to think of ourselves as one system, as Milford Regional, but officially we're three corporations. The physician corporation, to me, really kind of stands out as really a strategic success of our system, because again, you can't grow the system if you don't have physicians bringing patients in.
How many employees in the hospital group?
The hospital or the physician group?
In the hospital group?
I think overall about 2,000.
And in the physician group?
About 500.
Yeah.
500?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have around 100 physicians and about 50 advanced practice providers, and the balance of that 500 is support staff.
Support.
Yeah.
But out of that 100 now, how many are private care?
Primary care?
Primary care. not
About
private.
55, including pediatrics, family medicine, medicine pediatrics, and internal
And
medicine.
the other 45 are?
So about 20 of them or so are hospitalists, and then it's a mix of medical and surgical specialties. I could name them. Let's see, pulmonary, rheumatology, endocrinology, OBGYN, urology, cardiology, ENT. I hope I didn't forget anybody. Palliative care, breast surgery.
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah.
So, 38 physical sites, I believe.
Our medical center's got to be the biggest employer in the area.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. Can I tell you a little story, Al? Because this is personal to me. So I came here. I worked 6 years at Metro West, so 5 years at Leonard Morse in Natick, and then 1 year with the merger. And I really enjoyed my time there. I grew up in the finance world, came to Milford as the chief financial officer. So when I came here, again, 27 years ago, Framingham was much, much bigger than Milford, and Leonard Morse was bigger than Milford. So both of those hospitals were bigger. So I was coming to a smaller place. Now, 27 years ago, we've been growing, and it's great for our community, and Metro West has been shrinking. And actually, I didn't realize it was just published in the Wall Street Journal. I kind of did the math. We are now 18% bigger based on discharges than both of those hospitals combined.
Really?
It's unbelievable. I mean, to me, it just goes. I mean, unfortunately, they haven't done as well and they've had multiple owners. Again, it's the for-profit, we don't wish anything bad on them. But I said, wow, and it really speaks to the whole system here. Our ability to recruit physicians, the importance of our employed group, our relationships with Boston and Worcester facilities. And we should also say we have a number of great private practice groups committed to the hospital. And then you touched on it a little bit. We've been able to grow and really improve our facilities at the hospital. We haven't stopped really since I've been here, but we couldn't do it without our community. And I know you still say there's only 5 or 6 out there. I think there's more, but really our community. I talk to other hospital systems. Our community is just so supportive.
But again, a lot of that is what you, Frank, before you have built.
Yeah.
Because when we first started talking about building out the ER and all,
Yep.
and you said, well, this is how much we can afford.
Yep.
And how much did you need from the community?
Well, what we said is, we knew we were ready for our next project, and we said, do we do emergency department, do we do med-surg beds, or do we do ICU? And we had a building committee, you know, and I want to plug Vaskin Bojic. He's our chairman. And
Go Bogey.
And we have a number of dedicated, very helpful, experienced members of our building committee. And that included Kevin Meehan. And Kevin said, he said, so this is going to cost this is going to cost this. He said, well, what if you did it all in one building? How much would it cost? And, you know, we were all laughing on the floor, and then we got up and said, it's going to be over $50 million. And Kevin said, I think that's what we got to do. And we sort of, you know, said, yeah. And then we said, well, we would have to like fundraise half of it. And Kevin said, yeah, you'd have to fundraise $25 million. I'll give you, if you do the big project, I'll give you $5 million. And we said, how can we not pursue that?
That means the average Milfordian or Milford area person has got to chip in and come up with $20 million.
Yeah.
I mean, we grew up, you could have bought Hopedale, they would have thrown in Mendon for $20 million.
And do you know yesterday? So, you know, we always think we've built something we can kind of relax. It was a big, I mean, taking on $25 million in debt in addition to the fundraising it was a big challenge for us. We were, you know, kind of hurting there for a little while because it's, you know, it's just like taking on a mortgage. You suddenly say, but we knew we would grow into the building. And Dr. Hopkins would tell you someday, you know, we're going to have to expand this ED, and we're not quite ready yet. But we have 50 rooms, which is huge. So when we tour recruits, like we just walk and talk and show them. But yesterday, and so, you know, people might say, well, this is a kind of a good business problem. 80 patients in our ED. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. But we had
amazing.
Dedicated staff. RNs, people stayed, the team pulled together, and now we say, boy, isn't it a good thing that we did that big project?
Amazing. My hat is tipped that you've built, you, Jeff, everybody, have built a love from the community, a respect from the community, that our little community came up with $20 million. And not take anything away from Kevin.
Yep.
You know, God bless him, thank God. But the average person chipped in and came up with $20 million because of what they thought you have built.
Yeah. And, you know, we've been as focused on the outside of the hospital in terms of renovation. So we're so excited about Franklin. We did Northbridge a few years ago. Because, you know, we've got to have places to put physicians if we recruit them. So that's as much on our mind. This year at the hospital, we completely renovated the 4th floor. We haven't quite wrapped up that campaign. That was $6 million, and that was our targeted fundraising. So almost all of that 4th floor was done with fundraising again. We've got a couple of other projects that are less visible in the hospital, renovating our pharmacy. Again, it's all about infrastructure and you know, kind of providing for the future. So that's a big
But there
renovation
again, that
for
third
us.
leg of the team.
Yeah.
I love Emily, but I can feel her hand going in my pocket. Somehow it's like, okay, you know, it's that time of year again. And that whole team makes it easy to want to support the medical center.
Yeah. And again, I think why does the community, you know, why are they so supportive? It's the staff. It's, you know, we talked about it before. We have a dedicated staff, and it's not just it's nurses, it's ancillaries, it's the support staff, and a group that I've gotten to know better over the years. It's the physician staff, because they got it tough too. And actually, one thing we haven't talked about. Something that the group went through, but they just went through a big IT computer conversion in this past year, and the hospital is going to do one this year. So for me, it's about building infrastructure for our future.
How is your hair not white if you made 100 MDs go through a major IT conversion?
I'm
Most of
asking
it,
the same thing myself.
you know, and honestly, most of it was done on Phil's watch. But having said that, you know, it's still we're still struggling, and we're still not you know, back to full speed. It's a huge endeavor, and the change we went. I was thinking about how to a good comparison. You know, our old electronic record that we were on since 2007, and the new EMR, which is much more integrated with other systems, and the ability to share data is much better with it. It's kind of like trying to be a stranger and find your way around Milford versus New York City. The old EMR to the new one. The new one is just that much more complex.
It was 13 years ago when you first said you were
2007, we went from paper to electronic. I was the first office in, at that time, Tri-County Medical Associates to convert from paper to electronic.
Boy, time goes by
Yeah.
fast.
And so it's tough, and so trying to give the providers and the staff the most support you can while they're trying to continue business as usual, while doing that. It's been a tough year, but I think we're coming out the other side of it, and I think we're trying to get back to sort of
So
business
we got
as
our
usual.
ENT department back up to where we want
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Yep.
Hats off.
Yep.
What's the next challenge?
Well, it's already happening. They're not here yet, but neurology, we've had a private group in neurology, and next year we'll tell you more, but we've got a couple docs coming that are incredible talent. These are like top Boston doctors
we had a
coming here.
group come on that were the neurosurgeons.
Yeah, this is neurology, so there's
Right.
a different, yeah.
But I mean, I remember when they put everything in perspective when they said, "Oh, brain surgery, that's passé. Yeah, that's normal now."
Yeah.
And I sat there and said, "Wait a minute. Brain surgery in Milford is something you just write off
Not
as..."
too much, but it's
But I mean,
in
it
the
just
future,
showed
yeah.
you
Yeah.
the level. Now neurology coming here too?
Well, we've had neurologists, and we've had a good run with like private docs, and they're, you know, they need help. We're expanding, and so I think to bring in, so we're bringing in 2 new docs, so they're going to start like probably August or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Late summer, early fall. They're
Yeah.
A pluses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we're very fortunate to get both of them.
yeah. So we're
So
excited.
except for some real specialized areas, is there really anything not available in Milford yet?
Well, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, is we need to keep working harder and harder and harder for primary care. You know, right now, you know, we had a couple of retirements this year, and we've just barely been able to hang on and absorb those practices because we haven't been able to bring in new physicians yet. So really, for me, a lot of the energy is going to go towards trying to find primary care, whether it's physicians or nurse practitioners, to, as Ed said earlier, we have the demand is there in the community. They see what we have here. They want in. And, you know, the way in a lot of times is through a primary care doctor.
Well,
and
you
that's where we
certainly
need.
have a good partner, you know, and I think of personal situations I've run into where one of these potential PAs studying, I referred to, talk to Ed about the system. The impression that you made when you took the time to give her a tour, and when you went down to see her while she was doing her intern activities, she came over and said, "The CEO came to visit us. He took time out of his day." Now, it may have been 2-3 minutes out of your day, but that person now will look at Milford as the ultimate goal for the rest of her life, because you took the time. And you could talk all you want when she graduates and you're recruiting her, but those 2 or 3 minutes that you took out of your day, just that, you can't buy that kind of publicity.
I agree, and we have 2 new nurse practitioners who are starting in our group who were former nurses in our ER. So they were ER nurses, they furthered their education, they did training, they came back to us.
Yeah.
And I think The more we can do that, the better. And I think it's a perfect example of why look elsewhere, right? You know, they saw what the place was like when they were in the ER. They want to be, they're furthering their education. They want back in at a different level because of the community we have here.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what we talk about, the proof is in the pudding, as they say, when we've had people come on this show. And some of the new names, I'll call you and invite them to come on and talk. But you start talking to people, and well, I've only been here 23 years. And you sit there and say, you know, especially the primary care, they could go work anywhere.
Yep.
You know, you're having a hard time. Phil had a hard time recruiting them.
Yep.
So your people could go work anywhere and they decide to stay here. Got to be doing something right.
Yep. I think if we get them here, we're going to keep them. It's, you know, it's just you know, everybody, you look all around us, everywhere around us, they're looking for the same thing. So we're trying our best to stand out in that crowd, you know, by our model, the way we take care of patients and the way we take care of our staff and our employees and our physicians. You know, we try to set ourselves apart that way as best we can. Once we get them here, I'm pretty confident that they're going to stay.
I think there are many providers in healthcare providers just across the board that they're in a different part of the state, and for personal reasons or family reasons or kid reasons, they can't like move. But if we can, if there's a reason that either they have a local tie already or we can get them to come out this way, we have a pretty good track record with that. So you know, it's about spreading the word. A lot of times recruitment really is word of mouth. It's really word of mouth that drives our success.
Now, are you limited, Ed, as far as growing the group? I mean, I think about it, it's a local medical center. I can't call it the Little Red Hospital anymore. Although I grew up thinking of, you know, the Little Red building that we used to sneak into to see people. But how far can you, I mean, you are all the way out to Uxbridge, out to Franklin, Hopkinton.
Yeah, I don't think of sort of what are we working hard on? We're looking hard in terms of improving access and growing, but I don't think of it specifically in terms of geography, moving to the next town. It's actually kind of providing resources in where we already are to accommodate patients.
I think there are people who live in Milford who would like to have a primary care doctor in the system in our group who can't. I think there are people in Medway, in Hopkinton, Holliston, Bellingham, Hopedale, Mendon who want to have primary care providers in our group, in our system, who can't right now. We've never been in the position where we've had too many providers. So the more we've grown, the more we've filled. So we haven't reached our saturation point yet. And I agree, we're not looking to get 20 miles away and open a practice there. We're looking to...
So it's not a matter of, it's not a fungus principle of expanding. It's more of building more for people in the area.
We could, if we had space and providers, we could probably add a new provider at almost every one of our primary care sites, and they would be busy within 2 years, is my prediction. And we have 10, 15.
I believe it because my daughter, when she turned 26, they finally told her, you need to leave our practice. You're no longer a pediatric patient. She says, but I've been here my whole life. I said, no, you need to find something outside of pediatrics. And everywhere she looked, you know, you ran into this closed practice. And that's when we learned that closed meant no vacancy, full. Which amazes me. I mean, I'm tickled pink that physicians that are working for you are in such demand, because if they weren't doing well, they wouldn't have full practices.
We have high quality physicians and nurse practitioners and physician assistants. We really do. And we have very good support staff for them too. So yeah, people want to be in our practices. That's a good problem to have, but yet it is a problem still that we don't have the access. So we're working on it.
As we're coming to the end, what's the biggest challenge you think you're going to face besides recruiting primaries?
Recruiting primaries. I think it's probably doing what we can to help minimize what's very prevalent today, which is physician burnout. It's a tough job being a primary care
And
doctor.
Kate came on and talked about
Yeah.
the problems
Yeah.
that.
And so that's the way we may lose physicians or make them be less productive and unable to do even what they're doing now. So, I hinted at it earlier, one way we're looking at every way we can to provide physicians with medical scribes who do a lot of the data entry into the electronic record, because that's the thing that, it's not the seeing patients that really causes the burnout, it's all the additional work when you're not seeing the patient. For every, a lot of studies will show that you spend at least as much time working on a patient after you've left seeing them, or twice as much time.
You can see Bill Shine, David Carlson, their faces when they're talking about medicine, you can tell. This is where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Then they look down at the paper. Mm-hmm. Not so happy of a face.
Right.
But now I guess they have shadows. Every time they come in, they have a shadow. I guess it's a scribe.
That's the scribe, right.
The scribe,
So
yeah.
unfortunately, there are not enough to go around for every physician to have one. And that's my goal, is to keep working on different ways to do that. Because I think that's an answer for a lot of docs to at least relieve some of the stress. So to answer your question, other than finding more providers, it's trying to lower the amount of stress and burnout there is in our current providers.
Well, welcome officially all the way from Medway
All the way from
to
Medway,
Milford.
yeah.
And Ed, all we can say is keep doing what you're doing.
Thank
We
you.
like it.
Thank you. Well, we've had some changeover at senior management this year. Again, kind of long-term people that have retired. So our HR department, our CFO actually retired. So that was a big change. She had been here longer than I had been. And then with Phil, and so there are a lot of years and a lot of experience. So for me, we hired a CFO that was brand new to our system, great experience, doing fantastic. We hired in HR someone that had been here before, so she had a little knowledge. But what a difference it's been to have Dr. McSweeney join our practice, because basically he kind of, serving as medical director, he already knew a lot of things. So the transition with him has been really tremendous, and I think very well received by the staff, physicians, as well as all of the support staff. So it's worked out really well.
Well,
great.
as
So
I said, welcome. Thank
you.
you for everything you've done
Yeah.
and you'll continue to do.
Yeah.
Look forward to meeting some of the
Yeah.
new staff.
Yeah.
We'll have them on the show
We'll
and let
send
them
them your way.
introduce.
Thank you.
And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, it's amazing when you really look at what is offered here in Milford at the Medical Center. I've gone through it when I had my little nuisance, and quadruple bypass was as pleasant as you could expect and as efficient as you could hope for. It was incredible how well they treated me and how I was out of Milford on a Thursday night and back in my own little bed in Milford on Monday. Incredible service, incredible technical ability, and more than anything, incredible staff and management. So I hope none of you get to use the medical facilities, but if you do, you can feel comfortable. And as always, may God bless. May tomorrow be a healthier night than tonight. Good night.
Not too long since I've been home, been running all my life just